back. This is the second video in the Flow Certified Coach online training series. And in this video, we're going to look at a tool set versus mindset. One of the biggest things that is causing confusion out in the marketplace is the idea that scaling and transformation are often talked about in terms of being synonyms to each other. They have a lot to do with each other, but they're actually two different things. And when you look at rollout, that's really a subset of scaling. And when you look at governance, governance and transformation go hand in hand. So, in this video, we're going to look primarily at transformation and scaling, and governance and rollout. We'll look at that another time. I could have drawn the pictures a lot of different ways, but I almost wanted this to be as easy to understand as possible. And so, in order to be successful with scaling, you gotta know what you're doing with transformation in order to be successful with both. And so you need to understand the difference between the two and where the two overlap. If you try to scale without transforming, then your risk of failure for your scaling efforts, those can increase exponentially. And it's tough to scale Agile without doing the parallel work to transform your organization and culture. It's a huge amount of work, and you have to be taking a long-term view in order to be successful with transformation and scaling. So let's dive in. As I mentioned, to successfully scale Agile, scaling to me is more a tool set view. And transformation is the mindset that's required. So they're both required if you're going to be successful. Here's where it gets tough. The skill sets for implementing each of these two are sometimes competing competences or competencies, whichever way you say that, since both management and leadership skills are required. There's only three things that happen in any organization, and that's friction, confusion, and underperformance. Everything else requires leadership. But let's look at the tool set half first. On the tool set side, we've got a whole bunch of Agile methods. We have team level Agile methods. So you're talking about Scrum, Scrumban, hybrids of Scrum, Scrum XP, XP, Kanban, Scrumban, and you name it. I mean, the list is long. If you ever want to see the whole list, take a look at version 1's annual report on the state of Agile. And you'll get a pretty good list of all the tools and methodologies that are out there. And all of these frameworks and tools have been taught to us as frameworks and tools. They talk a lot in the training about the mindsets, but they never really talk about how to change an individual from the inside out. It's all outside in. And so for me, when they're doing the tool set view, it really feels like they're trying to do external behavior modification. And so they're doing extrinsic motivators, and it can end up not being sustainable. What I mean is that, for example, I had a customer a couple years ago where they had been trained by the top training company in the country where they're working. And 9 years later, they were struggling so badly. They brought our team in in order to try to breathe life back into their Agile efforts, and they were doing an Agile reboot after 9 years. And so what happened was Agile advocates and Agile champions within the organization, they left. They said, I'm going to go do something else somewhere else. I'm done with this. And so when that happens, it's no longer sustainable because they were imposing from an external way the Agile scaling. And so this company was able to, they could send stuff through the system really fast. They could deliver things quickly. But the problem is that those things that they were delivering were not meeting the needs of the organization, so it created friction between the technology side and the business side. So when you're looking at scaling, if you're not doing things really well at the team level, okay, all scaled Agile is predicated on that the teams are able to do Scrum or Agile or Scrumban or whatever flavor of Agile that you're doing, that you can do it really well. Originally, SAFe was predicated on all of your teams doing Scrum and that they were doing it well. And SAFe is Scaled Agile Framework for those that aren't familiar with that. LESS is Large Scale Scrum. There's Nexus, Scrum at Scale. Internal homegrown methodologies. Again, look at the version 1 annual report and you'll see that all of these different methodologies are listed, with SAFe being roughly about 30% of all the implementations. People are using SAFe. I got to attend a invitation-only SAFe conference in Stockholm a couple years ago, and one of their top trainers presented everything that you needed to have in the way of soft skills, read, leadership skills. And it was amazing because it was basically, afterwards I went up to that top trainer and I said, you basically need everything that you just described is here in flow. Everything. And she looked at me a little bit and she goes, I actually met Ted when he was out in Colorado. So it was like, even the top people within SAFe understand that just doing the structures isn't going to help you. Okay, the structures have the rituals and it requires so much discipline. If you are not disciplined at the team level, you're going to get slaughtered at the program level, and that's where SAFe and LESS and Nexus and all those tools really live, is at the next level up. So if you're not disciplined at the team level, you're not going to be disciplined at the program level and above, and that is going to give you a lot of heartburn, because what's going to happen is that you're thinking, this framework up here will solve all the problems that we have at the team level. And it's like, no. What's going to happen is it's going to exponentially amplify all the heartburn that you have down at the team level. And that's something I think a lot of companies miss. And they'll go, what's everybody else using? And, it's like herd mentality. And everybody goes, 30% are using SAFe. That's the safe choice. Let's go with SAFe. And Agile purists, for the most part, hate SAFe. Okay? Spotify, they tested SAFe, and half of the coaches loved SAFe, the other half hated SAFe. And in the end, they said, we're not going to use SAFe. They might have used inspirations from SAFe, but when you look at the model that they ended up with, it didn't look like SAFe. Here's the thing that's really the problem, both at the team level and at the program level, is that the tools drive the behavior. So if you choose Jira or MS Planner or Trello or any infinite number of tools. They'll go at the program level. Oh, well, the program office will go, we need a tool. And so they'll take Jira, because Jira is the one tool that a lot of companies use these days in order to try to track what they're doing, without realizing that those tools will drive the behavior. It's the tail wagging the dog. Instead of having the processes inform the tool informs the processes. And anyone that works with management and leadership will immediately recognize the heartburn that that is going to create. And so it's tool-driven behavior. That is not where you want to be. And in my view, that is just going to really compound. If you have problems at the team level, it's going to compound it up here. Worse, we've got companies out there with zero experience at the team level for Agile, where they've got tens or hundreds of functioning Agile teams that can actually do Agile, and they can do it well. They have maybe one or two pilots done, and they're out there trying to pick, well, what's our program level tool? And they're way too early in the game. One of the Agile founders, when I was at the Scrum Gathering 2013, one of the founders said, scaling is the last thing you should do. And he grinned, because everybody got the inference. It's either you should never do it, or literally it's the last thing you should ever try to do. And so, because everyone knows you have to have those teams working first. If the teams aren't working, you're really increasing your risks of totally failing. And so, are the tool sets bad? No, not necessarily. But the problem is that they're implementing the tools without taking a second or third look at, what do we have to do from a mindset transformation standpoint? How do we breathe life into these teams so that they're able to take the tools and actually be successful using them? Okay. And as I mentioned earlier in the opening, we're not looking at rollout here, because to me, rollout is a subset of the scaling side. It's a tool set. It's how you structure it. But the governance, on the other hand, that you are now getting into the meat of an organization of how do we move the big chunks of work through the organization from idea to product, so that we're able to either increase revenue, decrease costs, get rid of or mitigate risk, or at minimum do the right thing. And I put those in descending order because I'm putting in the order of how easy it is to measure it, because there's always revenue and costs are pretty straightforward, but when you get into risk mitigation, how to measure that and how to put a value on that, and definitely when you get into doing the right thing, now you're into an abstract area that becomes extremely difficult to measure. And so you could be absolutely measuring the wrong thing using your tools, getting the wrong information, making wrong decisions based on tool set that might or might not have been right for your organization. By the way, for me, it's a both and. It's not an either or. And the Agile purists would have you believe it's an either or. It's not an either or. It's a both and. You have to do both and. If you're doing either or, you're going to die. You have to do both and. Okay, now, as I was just getting into with the leadership view, the mindset view, and we're going to dive into this a little bit deeper, but it's those four things I just mentioned: increase revenue, save cost, get rid of, mitigate risk, or do the right thing. That's the results that the leadership is looking for. And that's the mindset that you have to have coming into doing any kind of team level work. Doesn't matter. Okay. When we're looking at cascading vision, a lot of companies, they're able to get their vision down within a range down to the team level. But even if they have a 10% loss, by the time they're to the team level, they've lost half of the message. And that's why Dr. Cotter at Harvard was telling the executives, unless you are communicating your vision for change 10 times more than you think you need to, it's not going to happen. The way Dr. Carter said it is we undercommunicate vision and the vision for change by a factor of 10. Okay, so when you have cascading vision and you're getting it down to the team and individual level, some companies can do that well, some companies are horrible. And then companies are wondering, why do we have gridlock at the team and individual level? And it's primarily because they never distilled agreement and they didn't communicate their vision or their one thing down to the teams clearly. And so when you're looking at linking it back, most companies don't even think about linking it back. And if they do, they get so much noise that the executives just go, that's too much noise. Using what we teach in flow, you're able to link back a one thing going the other direction. And now all of a sudden, the executives can have a backlog of items from which they can look at that and go, that one thing, if we do that one thing for that team, it's also going to help 12 other teams. Well, let's do that one first. It helps them prioritize the things that have to change, and it helps them support the teams, and it helps create the servant leadership, because if the teams are feeding the information back up the food chain after it's been cascaded down, and the teams are feeding back the information, it's really important to be able to work with that. Changing the mindset, the internal behavior, and changing it from the inside out instead of the outside in, that becomes intrinsic motivators, autonomy, mastery, and purpose, things like that. And it's at that point that both your transformation and your scaling become sustainable. Okay? Transformation is all about training, coaching, and mentoring. Train, coaching, and mentoring in all areas, in the individual, team, and in the product, program, process, line management box, and up in the organization portfolio up to the executive box. And it's train, coach, and mentor in all 4 areas. And you can't touch one area without touching the other 3. And when we're looking at this, you'll notice that the T I have here, it starts to fade away at the bottom. That's because these 2 overlap. And I didn't want to overcomplicate this and throw in rollout and governance, because that would make this an extremely complicated picture. And it's really important to note that as you're building the culture, that requires the vision, the mission, the purpose, why are we doing this, the values and attitudes, then the strategies, and then the goals and objectives, going from abstract down to concrete again. And by doing that, by shaping the culture, and by shaping the values and attitudes correctly, it makes it easier to roll out the tool set versus just trying to do that without first addressing the cultural changes and the organizational changes that have to happen. And so what happens is that the tools don't drive the behavior, the beliefs drive the behavior. And so being successful with both of these is understanding they're 2 different ideas that overlap but also compete, because the tool set requires management skills and the mindset requires leadership skills. And if we go back to that original quote, only 3 things happen naturally in an organization, and that's friction, confusion, and underperformance. Everything else requires leadership. And so if you're trying to scale and you're not working on that leadership part, you've just increased exponentially the odds that you're going to fail. A lot of people have seen the Agile onion out on the internet. And originally, when I looked at this, I was just like, this is partly what's wrong with Agile today, because in the center, that's the starting point. Okay. And for the tool set, well, if you're teaching a tool set view of the world, which all Agile training does, they try to get the mindset in there, but it's more alluded to rather than going right after it and saying this is the mindset that you have to have. And so it's like, wow, we got all these tools. We've got Jira, we've got MS Planner, we've got a electronic version of SAFe. We have our tool set in place, so now we can go ahead. And you got the tools and processes, and then you'll see that from there they develop their practices, the principles, the values, and then ultimately the mindset. And for me, I look at that and I go, okay, if you're only going to do a tool set view, and from a consulting standpoint, if that's what you want to do from the rollout view and things like that, you're going to get a lot of resistance to change, because people have already made up their minds about Agile many times when you come into an organization. And so to do it this way, implementing tool sets require program management skills. Okay, these aren't necessarily leadership skills. This is how we're going to get the hard work done, and we're going to chunk it up this way. Have a party. Okay, and again, for all the reasons that we talked about on the last page, I'm not convinced that this picture is the best way to do things. And again, it's not an either or. It could end up being a both and. Okay, and when it's a both and, then it's both top down and bottom up. If you're only trying to do Agile from bottom up, and this is probably why Agile fails over 50% of the time. I think it's 58% of all Agile efforts fail, and 70% of all change management efforts fail, and 86% of all traditional efforts fail. So you're talking about a 1 in 7 chance of winning if you're not doing Agile. So to get on this journey and go down this road, it's a long journey. And if you're only starting, you're only a couple decades behind the curve. Okay? Now, but the good news is that if you do it right, you can accelerate the speed at which you transform the organization. And you do that by starting with the mindset. And like I put over here for transformation, train, coach, and mentor, train, coach, and mentor, every area, okay? Mindset's the starting point from which you distill agreement on what your values and attitudes with. And then you distill the principles, and then you distill the practices, and then you look at the tools. What is it that you're going to actually choose to implement your Agile, in the sense that you need to be able to measure what you're doing if you're going to be able to succeed. Otherwise, if there's no reporting, the executives are just going to go, well, show me how you made money, saved money, got rid of risk, or how you did the right thing. Okay? And so implementing mindsets require leadership skills, and you need to do it in a way that it signals throughout the organization that everybody's within this journey. Everybody is going to do a mindset shift. If people aren't willing to do the mindset shift and change the culture, then your beliefs won't drive the behavior. Okay? And this is the other way around. When you get out to practices, we're talking about behaviors. And before you get to behaviors, you got mindset, values, attitudes, and principles before you even get there. So the last thing to choose is the tools on how you're going to report this. And so many times this is why we have to customize the view for a customer. And it's really shocking to the leadership to say, what, there's no standardized tool that we can just plug in and we're good? And that's what they're trying to do over here on the tool set side. So if you can understand the difference between tool set and mindset, it's not that one is necessarily more evil than the other. It's just that it's not either or, it's both and. If you're not doing both, then you've just increased the odds that you're going to not succeed. It's basically for scaling. It's the same thing. If you write lousy code for software, for the software, don't try to scale it. Okay, it just creates exponential problems and heartburn for everyone up and down the food chain. And I don't really think that's what people want. So what's really exciting about this video series that we're going to be going through, we're going to be starting with the 18 tiles now. And what's really great is you don't have to listen to me for the next 20 plus videos. Some of the tiles will have multiple teach backs on them. And it's going to be really interesting because it's other flow certified coaches and flow certified trainers who have actually taken everything that we teach in our books. They've taken it from the books and they've applied it in real life. And so these are people who know what they're talking about, who have actually been able to succeed using flow, because what we do is duplicatable, and we want you to be able to achieve and deliver the same remarkable results that many of us have been delivering now for decades. And so I'm really excited that we've got about 12 of our coaches and trainers that are going to be sharing with you through these next videos as we go through the Flow Coach, Flow Certified Coach online training series. So let's go to the recap slide. See if I missed anything. Hopefully not. Remember, transformation and scaling, two different things, two very different things. In order to be successful with both, it's essential to understand the difference between the two. Hopefully you're starting to get that now, and where the two overlap. If you scale without transforming, your risk for failure is going to dramatically increase. And it's tough to scale without doing the parallel work to transform the organization and culture. And if you're not willing to make that investment and go on that journey, you're wasting all your money, or a lot of your money, you're wasting to just scale. It's not going to deliver what you think you just bought. Okay? So both need to be embedded into the DNA of your organization. This is more than semantics, since it goes to the very heart of your success or failure. It's mindset plus tool set. It's a both and situation. It's not either or. Rollout shouldn't even be confused with these. Rollout is just, how do you get this going and get the methodologies out there. And that has to be customized for every organization. And governance, same thing. It has to be customized for every organization. Finally, attempting a tool set only transformation increases your risk of failure dramatically. And so my hope and goal for the Flow Certified Coach level is for you to be able to go out and duplicate the same results that we've been able to deliver to organizations all around the globe for the last 25 years. Thanks.